Monaghans Galway, located on the Tuam Road, is the leading dealership in Galway for new SKODA, CUPRA and Seat models. Now is the perfect time to order your new car or visit Monaghans.ie. You're welcome along to the Maroon White Pod. So this evening I'm joined by Ciaran Murphy of Second Captains. Ciaran's been on the podcast throughout the year. Ciaran, firstly, we're going to touch on Noel Tierney from Milltown, because obviously last week we had Damien Comer on and just didn't get a chance to touch on it, and it feels like the perfect time to pay tribute to a Galway GA legend like Noel. But it'd be remiss of me not to mention it when Twitter lights up last night. I'd say around half 11, quarter to 12. It's probably not the time you expect it to light up, but Brian Fenton retires, and it's obviously not Galway GA related, but Brian Fenton, like, what a player.
Yeah, God. This is kind of when sometimes when you make a bit of a fool of yourself. Because the first thing I wanted to do today was to check out just kind of how effusive I'd been in my praise of James McCarthy, and whether anything a couple of weeks ago, and whether anything I was about to say about Brian Fenton today might have made me look like a bit of a hypocrite from what I was saying a couple of weeks ago. Because to be honest with you, I mean, McCarthy has longevity on Fenton in that he started in 2010, 2011. And so he's been there for the whole thing, whereas Brian Fenton came in at 2015, came in fully formed as just a complete midfielder. So, I mean, McCarthy probably has him on longevity, but was there a more influential player? I mean, Kieran Kilkenny is extremely influential. Con O'Callaghan, his career started even after Brian Fenton. So, you make the argument however you want to make the argument. I don't think I was went overboard when I said that James McCarthy was the best player on the greatest team of all time. But at the same time, would you take peak Fenton or peak McCarthy? Oh man, that is a very, very that's a very tight call. I mean, he was Fenton is an incredible footballer, and this is the thing. He is an incredible footballer. He there wasn't a decline. We haven't kind of been sitting around thinking, oh well, will Brian Fenton give it one more year, and he adds something intangible to the group, even if his ability is on the wane or whatever. That's just not the case at all with Brian Fenton. He was as good last year as ever, I think. Um, Even though we managed to take him down in the quarterfinal. But I mean, still All-Star nominated, still the best. I mean, put it this way: if there was a transfer market, who would you sign? There's David Clifford and there's Brian Fenton. I think, and they're the two outstanding candidates in the game at the moment. And Fenton was exceptional, absolutely exceptional. And we never got a chance to see him in decline because he's gone out absolutely on the at the pinnacle of the game.
I don't think we all talk coming away from Croke Park when we bet them that was going to be the last time we seen him.
No, absolute, like just absolutely not. There was no indication what. I mean, we can be wise after the event. He did a brilliant interview with Malachy Clerkin in the Irish Times in October of last year, and he said a big thing in his head was that he'd like to play 10 years as a Dublin footballer. Whether I play 11 or 12 is another matter, but I want to do 10 full years with the Dublin senior team. So maybe he was offering us straws in the wind there. But again, you're looking at any diminution in his influence on games, and there just hasn't been. And you look at how he's kind of layered on throughout his career, um, elements of his game, and there you sat down to watch a couple of YouTube clips of Brian Fenton's best moments, just trying to remind myself of how good he was today. And one thing that came immediately to mind was you can see him kicking points with his left foot in 2015, 2016, and 2017. And by the time it comes to 2020 and 2021, that left foot is it's no longer a weak foot. You might call it a less dominant foot, but the technique has gotten better over years. And I mean, just what an example that is to the club Mullickers among us. That Brian Fenton looked at himself as player of the year in 2018 and thought, there's actually ways I can still improve what is I suppose, a basic skill in the game, you might call it. But like he never stopped improving, actually. And you saw even in the last 18 months a propensity for him to spend time at full forward and be a brilliant full forward. Genuinely, with his back to goal, just has the instincts of an inside forward. And you're looking at these new rules that may or may not come in over the next couple of weeks, and you're thinking, God, like a 35-year-old Brian Fenton left on the edge of the square could cause wreck, genuine wreck. Um, and that's something we're not going to see. Like, I mean, that's the way as it is now. Jack McCaffrey's come back, Paul Mannion's come back, but they never actually said they were retiring. They said,
Yeah.
well, I'm not going to play this. I'm not going to play this year. And you take the year on its merits thereafter. Um, this is a retirement, so we should take him on his word. That it appears to be, a decision he's made, and that's it. So, I mean, it is a loss to the game. Genuinely, I mean, I think uh, for all that we suffered under him, and many counties got many more beatings than we did off a Brian Fenton led Dublin. But I mean, we still obviously suffered. There was that All Ireland semi final in 2018 that was just devastating and gruesome from our point of view. But he was a brilliant, brilliant footballer, and a brilliant footballer to watch. Great fella off the field to deal with, personally or professionally. A class act, genuinely. And I think he's like he is. He's just absolutely a loss to the game.
Were you happy yourself you weren't sold as Dublin Murph this time coming on the podcast?
I would, you know what, Paul? I appreciate that. I think there's signs of growth there. I mean, yeah, rather than just taking cheap pot shots at me. So I do appreciate that. Thank you. I should have
Yeah.
actually said that from the gun there. Thank you very
Yeah, I
much.
know. We went for the neutral point of view this time.
Yes, well, I appreciate it.
Just on it because you had a cracking piece in the Irish Times then when we come to about Noel Tierney, and it's just a terrific photo with himself and Paul Conroy, and it's obviously been in other publications since. But obviously you never seen Noel Tierney play, but he was like a Galway GA great. But what is it from this? I suppose because it's probably from a lot of your perspective stories you've been told about Noel Tierney.
Yeah, and you know what? The big thing that comes to mind when you ask me about Noel Tierney and you ask me about kind of what he means to Milltown people, in a weird way, he's the image that is projected to the country of Milltown. And it was one of the things that was said from the stage last Sunday fortnight. Um, it was John Hare, I think, our captain in 1981, who said it. Um, that wherever you went in Ireland, they'd ask you, or you'd be asked, "What's your home club?" And where is it and all that. And you say Milltown in North Galway, and they say, "Oh, that's an Old Tierney country." And so, what a calling card to have as a club. A guy who won Footballer of the Year in 1964 as a 22-year-old. I mean, to be king of the game at 22 years old, it's an incredible thing. And to see the way he carried himself during that throughout the three in a row, afterwards as a club leader with Milltown, with quiet dignity throughout his life. I mean, as a club, like what a gift to be able to say that, yes, in any in the most tangential of ways that I wore the jersey that Noel Tierney wore. Like just what a gift that is. Um, and so, the three in a row for people of my generation, your generation, um, they kind of exist as legends, they still walk among us, and it's an extremely powerful thing. It was an incredibly powerful day that we had. For anyone, and there are plenty of you who didn't read the piece. It was the 3rd of November, um, and the community in Milltown had kind of come together to celebrate the life of Noel Tierney in the community centre in Milltown. And there must have been 300 or 400 people there. An organising committee led by Jim Carney, the veteran broadcaster, Michael Rattigan, John Hare, a number of others, people in the club, Owen Godwin, Paul Ciaran, and they all just kind of came together because it we hadn't done it as a club, we hadn't done it as a community, to just tell Noel that we loved him, that he was our hero, that he meant an awful lot to us. And he had health struggles over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, and that sort of thing, I suppose, maybe focuses minds. Um, and there was this big kind of unspoken element of the day, which was we're doing this now so that he knows, rather than doing it, down the line when when he passes away, as will happen to all of us. And it's not even that feeling wasn't um that it was uncomfortable to think that. I mean, that's just the reality of things, that if that you it's just a basic realization that these people pass on and you don't get the chance to say that you love them or to say that you're our hero. Um and to think, and so when the day went the way it went, there was just this great feeling of relief that he was in good enough health to enjoy it, and uh, everyone had spoken so beautifully, and he seemed to really enjoy it, and his family seemed to really enjoy it. And then to be hit just 7 days later with the news that he had passed away, I mean, it was just such a. I mean, so Jim Carney rang me on the Monday morning just to tell me the bad news, and you're just left with this feeling that life is strange and incredible and unbelievable and really sad, and it can be all those things at the same time. And I think for everyone in Milltown, there was just this great consolation that you could feel the sadness, but you could also there was a consolation, a huge, maybe even a relief in it that we had done it, that we had all been there to just to say, you are our hero, and it's not often, man. I've told the story a number of times, and I say, men of a certain generation, men of any generation, it's very odd, not all that common to hear people say just "we love you,"
Yeah.
And Bosco McDermott, 89 years old, who played alongside him in the full back line in all three of the finals, walks up on stage and says a few words, no notes, and he finishes them just by saying, "I've always admired you, and I'll always love you." And there was just so much power in it, just like before Noel's death, there was a huge power in it, and then afterwards, I was just sat there thinking, they're not all with us, all the three in a row lads, and how many times has Bosco McDermott maybe stood in funeral parlors or stood in churches and said, "God, I wish I told that fella what he meant to me, and how much I enjoyed the days we had together as teammates." And I just really got that when I heard him say those words. Um, and so for Milltown people, for his teammates on the three in a row team, I think that there really is consolation in that. Sad and all as the events of the last few weeks have been.
When you get to hear the stories about him, and obviously you wouldn't have seen him play like frequently because it was back in the 60s there, but do you start to appreciate them when you're hearing these stories, how good Noel Tierney was?
Yeah, I mean, like the one thing that everyone says about him was just this extraordinary physique that he had. That in a team of big men, I mean, I remember, I think it was one of the Donalds said before that the team was so big that every single one of them played midfield for their club. Um, and that in itself is kind of a statement. That they were all of just they just had a physique about them, a physicality about them, and even in amongst a team like that, Tierney stood apart. And it's weird, so you can say that obviously we don't see them and the footage is grainy and all the rest, but the 1966 final is on YouTube, and my brother Paul was honored to be asked to put together a little montage for the day in Milltown at the start of the month, and he sat down and watched the 66 final in full. And I've watched the 66 final as well in full in the past. And Tierney was man of the match. He was the dominant figure in the game. His dominance in the air was just genuinely incredible to watch. And it was a different game, obviously. And, you can try and transpose what we think about football in 2024 to 1964. And, there's maybe as an intellectual exercise, it has some merit, but it doesn't have a lot of merit when you're talking about the gifts, the talents of footballers of that generation, if they grew up playing the sport that we grew up playing, they'd have played a different way of playing for Galway. But that was the game that they played, and Tierney was peerless. Genuinely was peerless. Footballer of the year in '64. I think little or no doubt in my mind that he was man of the match in the '66 final against Meath. Um, and so the like that physicality that he brought, like that's the kind of the the overriding feature of it. But his dominance in the air, like his ability under a dropping ball, which was like the key facet of a fullback's game at that time. I mean, even the photographic evidence, like when he goes up for a ball, it's just he clears house. Um, and that's timing, that's physicality, obviously, but that's also timing, grace, execution. He was the whole package, And then from the point of view of Milltown, I mean, he won two minor titles with Galway, one with Jarlath's. He uh, he won the junior county title with Milltown in 1961 that got us promotion to the senior ranks, and we've never been relegated since. He wins the first county title of our two county titles in 1971. I mean, this is, as a club, these are the building blocks. These are what the club is made of, the foundation of the club. And Tierney's footprints are, of course, they're just completely all over it. And, they're like, that's the legacy, So, I mean, there are kind of the, and he was extremely hardworking, busy farmer, and he didn't play to, like kind of into his 40s, and there would have been periods in his life when he had to prioritize farming over the football goal. I mean, once his playing career had finished, so he nearly existed kind of beyond the club. Like he was more of a community figure than a club figure, to the extent where I actually had never spoken to him until 2.5 weeks ago. And I was talking to a couple of other players of my generation, and they'd said that they'd actually never spoken to him either, and that wasn't out of any aloofness on his part, but that was just the way that the direction that his life took him. And yeah, so it's kind of, he's the cornerstone of the club. Like it's not an exaggeration in any way to say that. And that the achievements of the clubs in the years afterwards, so much of it is down to people like Noel Tierney, because it's not just what a person like him does on the field. When you consider his achievements nationally, it's such a source of pride. It's also, I don't know, it's a calling card for all of us, and it's also a gauntlet thrown down. That that's the standard. Um, and if you're shooting for Noel Tierney, you're probably going to fall. You're probably going to fall flat, but you will have at least aimed at the upper limits, the upper echelons of the game, like the highest stratum of the game, and that's a gift in and of itself.
Anna, like it must just be really nice now as a club that you got that moment to celebrate him with it, and that you went through with it happening, because there probably would be plenty of regrets if that didn't happen.
Oh yeah, completely. And I know, speaking to Jim and speaking to other members of the committee who put it together, Noel was absolutely delighted, but he was also kind of bowled over by the response of the community, and that's it. It wasn't any exaggeration on any of our parts to tell him how deeply the regard that we held him in. Of course, that's only natural, but maybe it's also only natural for Noel to not really have a realization of that either. Um, and there's massive consolation in it. I mean, I have to say, I just an incredible uh sense of gratitude to Paul Conroy for coming along. And just to
Really made
give
it
the
extra
timeline.
special.
Oh, it honestly, it really, really did. And he had won so the All Stars had been the Friday before. So you're not even talking about 48 hours after. It's about 44 hours after he reaches his own pinnacle, and you know what a journey he had to get to play to Footballer of the Year. And even, you know, it kind of stands in opposition to what Noel Tierney did, you know, and that Tierney was there at 22, and you know he kind of must have looked around and thought this, you know, just what a whirlwind it was to be playing in a All Ireland minor final, and then 4 years later to find yourself an All Ireland champion, and sorry, excuse me, and a Footballer of the Year. And yet, and then you look at what Paul has had to go through as a Galway footballer, um, to kind of see what the challenges that he's had to face down, and then to get this reward at the end of a career that still doesn't have an All Ireland medal. And you know, we hope that next year will change that. But um, you know, that Paul would kind of, I mean, he was due to be in Limerick on Sunday evening at an event that he had already said he was going to do. And I know that he lives in the south of the county, not far from the M17. He literally went in entirely the opposite direction for 50 kilometers to be there to shake the hand of the man who won the award that he had just won 6 years earlier. Like that is just, it's a really a class act, you know, and to be in the hall to hear the kind of the hum and just the delight in everyone when because you know your people had kind of said, all right, that there is a chance that he'd been asked, but that he had something on, and who knows, you know, and then to just the kind of spontaneous burst of applause when he walked into the community center, and then he was up there talking for 3 or 4 minutes with Noel, just a private conversation between the two of them, which is just a lovely, lovely moment. And he was good enough to go on stage and speak for a few minutes as well, and speak about the heritage of Galway football that he knows he's kind of been born into and has adorned himself for many, many years. Yeah, like that was just really, really special. And it kind of, I don't know, context is kind of a weird thing. You know, you win 3 All Ireland medals in a row. It doesn't need any further context, I suppose, you know. But then you look at a career as gilded as Paul Conroy's that still doesn't have an All Ireland medal, and it does. It kind of puts it into, it puts it into a frame at least where you can kind of try and understand the enormity of what those lads did, you know. And so it's as you know, you asked me about what a consolation it was for Milltown, but you know, I hadn't met all of those the three in a row men, you know, Jimmy Duggan and Coley McDonough and Mick Garrett and the Keenans and Christy Terrell and Sean Cleary and these guys, and they're just such an incredibly impressive group of men. There was a couple of rows at the front of the hall reserved for them, obviously, and just to see them walking through the crowd, and so they're all so well dressed and straight backed, and you know, not young men, but they just carry themselves with just this air of, I don't know, grace and humility and respect for their own achievements. If that doesn't sound like a weird kind of oxymoron. Um, but you know, if you are you know, kind of a living legend, that's something you have to try and live up to as well, I suppose. And well, you know, at events like last Sunday, you have to kind of meet the moment as well, and just to see their love for Noel, and just the fact that they all got there, and it's not easy, you know, and none of that's easy, but they all got there, and they all still love each other's company, and you know, slag each other and having pops off each other, but still at the same time they're just men apart. They're genuinely just men apart. Like they walk among us, but there's just something about them, something in their bearing that says these guys have achieved something that will probably never happen again. You know, I mean, God willing, we'll be alive to see it, but you know, what are the chances? You know, like I'm 42 years old. I've seen Gola win 2 All Ireland medals. You know, you'd be a lot older than that. You could be, you know, 57 and see Galway win have seen Galway win only 2 All Ireland since those men. So you know, that was very, very special. It was a special thing to be able to host those men as well as just to kind of pay tribute to our own man, you know.
Yeah, really did seem like a lovely moment there. And obviously, our condolences to everyone in Milltown and the extended Tierney family on a remarkable footballer and a remarkable person, Noel Tierney. And he will be sadly missed by everyone in Galway GA. You mentioned there Paul Conroy, Ciaran, and Damien Comer on the podcast last week as well. And I was only listening to Paul Conroy an hour ago on the GA social, and you mentioned All Irelands, and I think it's still something we're all very sore still to talk about.
Uh, yeah, I mean, it's weird, isn't it? I mean, I've obviously met quite a few goalie people up here over the course of the last few months, and we kind of look at each other and goes, still a little too soon, still a little too soon to go to go talking through it. You know, it's such a disappointment, and actually, even the Fenton news today, you know, is just a reminder that. Like, what a day that was. Like, genuinely, what an
Yeah.
incredible day that was to beat the Dubs in Croke Park. And, you know, you think about Conor Gleeson's two frees to win the Connacht, or free to win the Connacht final. And, I mean, like,
You think it nearly been beaten in Sligo as well?
yeah, you know, you're not going to get too many better years than that to have have two games like that, the Mayo game and the Dublin game. And yet still the feeling now is that it's already been a long winter, and you know, it's bloody November, and there's a lot more kind of, I don't know, soul searching. Maybe the soul searching is finished. You know, at some stage you have to say it was just an incredibly disappointing day at the office. So many regrets, so many players that, you know, will just feel like they didn't do themselves justice. A nagging sensation that, you know, if you lose an All Ireland final, you want to at least be able to say the crowd that bet you went and won it, you know. And Armagh got 2 points in a near enough a half hour of football after the goal, and we just couldn't reel it in, you know. And like that's the real sickener, you know, that it wasn't that Armagh blitzed us, it wasn't that, you know, that they kind of blew us away with kind of a bravura performance. They did the business. They ended up with more scores than us on the board, and that's it. You know, you can't. There's no, and I'm not sitting here saying Galway deserve to win. Like, that's not the case. But
Mm.
you know, it's just that feeling that we didn't have to be a whole lot better than we were, bad and all as we were, to have ended the year as All Ireland champions. And of course, it's a massive opportunity missed. Um, but you know, you kind of look around now. You know, Kerry they realized that what they came with last year was nowhere near good enough. Dublin are now missing the heart and soul of their team without a shadow of a doubt. We had Paul Flynn on the second captain's podcast today, who said that the Leinster Championship is now a live discussion again, and that's how big he thinks Brian Fenton's absence will be for Dublin. And honestly, I don't think I disagree with him. I mean, if Roscommon were in the Leinster Championship next year, how big a chance would you give Roscommon now?
Yeah,
I mean, like,
completely agree. Yeah.
you know, and that's for all of the years that Meath and Kildare have writhed under the lash of Dublin, they they never took it upon themselves to think, well, whatever about being better than Dublin, let's be better than the likes of Roscommon and Monaghan and Cork and these counties, you know, um, and Donegal and Galway. Like they just kind of gave up on the whole thing, and now that they have an opportunity, can they get their act together in 6 months to actually have a real cut off Dublin in the Leinster Championship? I don't think it happens that fast. Maybe it does. Maybe it does. Maybe Robbie Brennan is the man to do it in Meath. I don't know. Um, but you know that like that's where Dublin are at. So there is no big dog left in this. You know, like, you know, I'm glad that we beat Dublin this year and not next year. You know, that we can say that Fenton retires with 3 defeats: Mayo, Kerry, and ourselves. That's where we are. I don't think, obviously, you know, if you had called me on the Monday after the Ireland football final, who knows what I would have said. Nothing good, nothing upbeat, nothing optimistic. But you look at it now in the cold light of day, and you say it takes a hell of a lot to get back to an All Ireland final. But I mean, there's not a whole lot more for our lads to learn about All Ireland final heartbreak, you know?
Yeah.
You if Rob Finnerty stays on the field, I think we win the All Ireland final. And I think that that's it's as simple and as complicated as that. We have, I think it's not, is it 9 or 10 players now who have now won All Stars? We have players across the board of an extremely high quality. Um, and I think we have to just think of that. The All Ireland final was so disappointing in so many ways, so many missed opportunities. I still see Matthew Tierney's hand pass to Liam Silk getting blocked down. I mean, I underneath the Cusack stand, it still sits in my mind along with the 10 or 12 other moments from the Ireland final, just going, that moment goes differently. And Damien Comer is on the end of a 2-1, of a 2-on-1. These are the margins, but we are in better position than, you know, we're in a better position than most, and I don't think there are many teams in a better position than us, if you know what I mean. I think
Yeah.
we need to remind ourselves of that disappointing and all as the final itself was.
Yeah, someone was asking me the last day, have I watched it back? And I haven't been able. They said maybe it's something to do over Christmas, but I'm not too
Yeah.
sure
Oh
about that.
God, definitely not at Christmas. I mean, God, and I don't know about November either. To be honest, I don't know what is a suitable day to watch it back.
Yeah.
As it turns out, I sat down and watched it the following morning.
Really?
Because yeah, I did. Yeah, I mean, I had to prepare for a podcast. I had to
Yeah.
write a brief. I had to try and piece together just how it happened. So I don't know. Uh,
Was
I
that the
think it
most
may have all
difficult thing
been.
you did in your job?
I don't know. There aren't many days I'd switch places with someone working a real job. But that might have been one of them. That might well have been one of them. But yeah, like I will. I'll sit down and watch it again. I think I'll have to before the season starts. And I don't know. January doesn't sound like a great idea either, to be
No.
honest. I honestly I don't know. I don't know when's an ideal time to do it, but I think we probably all should, because there's an element as well. I think that the further into the distance the game goes, the more you might forget some of the brilliant things that Galway did on the day, and Conroy in particular. And there's yeah, I I I I recommend it. I don't have I don't have a like an entire package put together of kind of here's for your mental well-being how to watch the Ireland football final in a safe space. I don't have a diagnosis for that, but I think before the first league game, we should probably all have sat down and watched it at least once.
What have you made of I suppose it's not really a saga, but the changes that's happened in the off season? Keane O'Neill has obviously went to Kerry and going to be a big loss because the 2 years we got to All Ireland finals, Keane O'Neill has been involved. Mickey Graham's coming in from Leitrim, and I suppose it's made Leitrim people a bit unhappy. But then there's sheer delight on Galway fans to finally have David Morris involved in a county setup.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe the it may have needed a little bit of freshening up. People say that all the time, from the outside, and we don't know. We honestly we don't know. Um, and we don't know whether it's true. We don't know whether it works necessarily, but certainly talking to people who have worked under Keane O'Neill, he's an extraordinarily good coach. For many people, the best coach that they'll have played under. Um, but he's a big voice, and he would have been kind of a constant presence in those players' lives for the last 2 or 3 years, and a change in that respect maybe is no bad thing. A guy of his pedigree walks out the door. That's obviously going to be a hit, but it's how you react to the hit, and I think a lot of people are actually pretty happy with the changes that have been made. But we don't know either. We don't know. It's these things again. Like you start the league, things go well. We don't know what game we don't know the sport that we're going to be watching in January and February. Genuinely, we don't know what it's going to look like. Um,
Are you
Good
excited by that?
coaches. I am really, really excited by it. I'm excited by the idea that coaches are going to be finding out on the job. They're going to have to try things in league games. League games are going to matter a bit. And you don't know I don't know, the type of player that's going to come to the fore. You know, genuine, like you look at Michael Murphy going back in with Donegal, and it's guesswork. You know, like when I say it's brilliant, he doesn't have to work back, he doesn't have to track back, he doesn't have to waste his energy chasing cornerbacks back down the field. Um, we still don't know what that'll actually look like. I mean, it makes sense to us now. Uh, Galway should be excited. Galway have been trying to do it for ages anyway. Play three forwards up. They're they've that's what they've been doing. That's what they've been trying to do for a long time. Um, so in ways, it shouldn't be, a massive structural thing for change for Galway. It's relief, I'm sure, for some of the players involved. Some of our, stylists, they don't have to do the work that they've been doing. But I mean, I look at Shane Walsh. I mean, Shane Walsh doesn't necessarily have to be one of the guys that's in the inside forward line, inside the opposition half. I mean, he still does a ton of brilliant work running from deep, and no, won't necessarily change. Um, but yeah, I mean, who wouldn't be excited? Like Paul, honestly, like I don't count myself an expert on many things, and I wouldn't count myself as an expert on Gaelic football, but I am an expert at sitting down and watching Gaelic football games and being extremely annoyed and frustrated by what I watch.
Yeah.
And you can make arguments, sure, that it's too much too soon. But honestly, those arguments don't really hit home with that many people, with very few people. People have just kind of reached breaking point with it, I think. And if the rules go too far, then the rules will be reined back in. But in
It's
many
even
ways,
interesting though. We've heard players now even talk about that it's time for change. Like there isn't necessarily a huge bunch of players that are against these rules.
yeah, exactly. And I think that for all that we said, the FRC were operating under massive pressure, and they had to get it right, etc., etc. There's it was also kind of a free shot. If they'd been doing this even in 2018 or 2019, I think people would have been, oh, God, maybe it'll turn. Like if you give the coaches time, they'll come up with something. No one's saying that now. Like a lot of really good coaches have sat down and they've decided the way that we saw the vast majority of games go last year is the smart way, the winning way to play football. And there's no argument about that. Like
Yeah.
I don't hold it against managers for playing defensive football. I mean, I don't think that any of them had much of an option really. Within, there are grades of it, and there are teams that are just, have been utterly poisonous to watch, and they're like that. But like among the leading counties, they've all tried it. They've all decided this is the way that we have to win. So in one respect, they were working under a lot of pressure. In another way, it was a completely free shot because because people's patience had just run out. The audience had just run out of patience with the game in the way that it was played. So let's try these things. Let's try the 2 point out. Let's try to keep the three up. Um, I actually don't think that people will be up in arms about any of these changes. I think they'll just go with it because we've just kind of reached crisis point with it. So let's see what happens. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's I don't know. Is there an element of laziness to that? Is there an element of like I don't know? You're giving up on the sport. I mean, I don't know. All I know is you don't go into Gaelic football games with particularly high hopes, or you haven't done over the last couple of years. And when a good game breaks out, it's a joy forever. But we should be able to expect more from a game that we know can be absolutely brilliant when played in the right way. So if it needs to be nudged along by the rule book, I say let's go for it. Let's have it.
Yeah. I even think if we took off I suppose tainted glasses with last year's All Ireland final, like it wasn't a good game of football if you're not
No,
from Galway
no.
or
I mean, you
Monaghans.
can't remember basically any of it, Paul. But I mean, I can tell you now, as a man who's watched it back. No, I mean it is. It was terrible, absolutely
Yeah.
terrible. And it's only natural for the Armagh players to be the most vociferous critics of the FRC rules because we'd probably be the same if we'd won it. We'd kind of nearly
Yeah.
look at it as a judgment on our All Ireland. And that's not what it is. That's absolutely not what it is. But I mean, you can absolutely see where the Armagh players are coming from with that kind of that defensiveness that they've shown. Um, so yeah, I say just go for it. Let's just have at it. And you know, also if you've got a team of Paul Conroy and Shane Walsh and these guys and Matthew Tierney, I've seen them hit a lot of points from very, very far out the field. So let's just see how that goes. We can be selfish as well about this thing.
Yeah, this 2 point there could benefit us.
Yeah, I think I think so. We've got a lot of really, really good kickers on the team. Um, but again, it kind of feels nearly churlish to kind of, you know, localize it in that way. Like the game needs it anyway. If we're in position to benefit in a few respects or be punished in a few other respects, then listen, that's the way of the world. But I think coaches will very quickly get to grips with it. And I'm happy with that. We have coaches that are, you know, eager to get stuck into it. And even just looking at the Connacht team in the FRC trial games, it was great to see as many goalie people as there were involved in it. They were kind of driving that backroom team in a lot of ways between Porrick and Scan, and I saw Sean Radigan there, and Cian O'Neill was there maybe behind enemy lines an element maybe, but at the same time, Porrick was still getting the benefit of much of Cian O'Neill's wisdom at that time. I don't have any problem with that. Mickey Graham was involved as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're in a better position than a lot of other counties just by dint of the sort of contribution that we saw from our players and our coaching staff that weekend in Croker.
Is there any Galway players in 2025 that you want to see get more significant game time?
Ooh, well, I can be very selfish and say Jack Horan, who I think was very good again this year in the county championship and has kind of served his apprenticeship on the squad, I think. And I think we will probably see a bit more of him. I mean, I could also cheat and say Peter Cook. I'd like to see Peter Cook.
Yeah, I was actually just going to bring that up next.
Yeah.
It definitely is one that I'd say Boris Joyce is going to try and do everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so, and you even look at the 2023 season and how good he was in a lot of Galway's games and how just involved he was in so much of that season. And, again, you talk about Rob Finnerty's injury, you talk about Shane Walsh's freeze. Geez, Peter Cook, would he have made a difference at that in the All-Ireland final? We'll never know. And hopefully Peter Cook gets a chance to play in the All-Ireland final. It's pretty bad luck to be, have missed out on both seasons. But I mean, I think Cook has the ability to I mean, I'd love to see Michael Daly back. I mean, I don't know. I didn't see a whole lot of the club championship this year.
Yeah,
I don't know where he's at with injury.
With injury in the club championship was the only thing.
Yeah, and there's I've heard very bleak prognosis about that injury. I still think he's an exceptional footballer. We just what a brilliant talent he is. And if it's not 2025, I'd hate the thought of never seeing him playing for Galway again. And I would love to see him back if at all possible. But there are some pretty obvious answers for you there, Paul. There's yeah, but again, that's it. I'm not looking at Galway thinking we need to add 2 or 3 more players. I'm looking at the final 2 or 3 or 4% that we need because we're very, very close and we possibly need to just remember that.
Yeah, injuries is definitely key to clear up this year. On and finally looking at 2025, is the hope still there for you in 2025?
Yeah, yeah, and again, I think we nearly all the conversations I've had about 2024, so many of them have been so bleak and so disappointed and so just I'm still quite kind of full of emotion and anger and everything. We're incredibly close, and we went to Crow Park and beat the Dubs, so that means we're not far away. We're genuinely very, very close to the mountaintop. And so that's it. It becomes nearly an argument of will then after that. Do you actually take what we've had to go through over the course of the last 3 seasons and just turn it into we aren't going to be denied? Like that, like that's what you have to do. Like it's It's what the best teams do. It's what the great teams do. So I think we're not as far away as it felt in the weeks after the Ireland final. It's not as bleak as those weeks were. And we just kind of have to remind ourselves, we have a lot of really, really good footballers who are coming off the back of brilliant seasons. Genuinely, like you look at Johnny McGrath, Dylan McHugh, Paul Conroy, like the motivations across the board are kind of incredible, like those guys need to push on. Uh, Damien and Shane have so much motivation to get their bodies right and get back to the top of the game, which is where, we kind of hope that they belong. Um, there's as a team, there's huge motivation, but then just as individuals, you look at them and go, wow, there's so much scope for improvement. There's so much motivation there to get better. And we just have to hope that the work is going in now. We know it is. So, yeah, yeah, like be positive because being negative for the last 3 months, that hasn't helped us, has it? So we might as well go the other
No,
way.
for sure. And the hope is still there. That's the main thing. That's the thing
Yeah.
we'll try and reinforce. And sure, it's our man to start it under lights in Pearse Stadium too.
Yeah, and isn't that brilliant? Isn't it absolutely brilliant? So, a chance to exercise some demons. Yeah, I mean, like, who knows what that game is going to be like? Honestly, like
Yeah,
we don't know what that game is going to be like, and for one welcome it and look forward to it.
great stuff. Well, that is all we do have time for on today's podcast. Thanks a million to Ciaran Murphy for coming on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.